All right. Welcome to Guys Talking Tech. Thank you for joining us tonight. We have a great crew. We all apologize for the little bit of a hiatus since the last time we were able to do one of these, but we're excited to kick this off and get these going over the summer. First, I'll start out by introducing everybody, and then I think we have kind of an interesting topic tonight. At least I hope so. So we'll go from my left to right. So we'll start with Joe Sheehan. Joe, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Joe Sheehan.
There you go. Joe's a realtor from Pennsylvania. Next we have Joe Drasen.
Hello, I'm Joe Drasen.
There you go.
And I am not a real estate
agent.
agent.
And he is not a real estate agent. We also have Mike Mueller joining us from the West Coast.
I'm Mike Mueller, and I have a message.
I totally agree.
I missed it. Here, I've been waiting for that one.
See?
Women.
We need women, absolutely.
Pandora's mirror.
Absolutely. Well, we started this as Guys Talking Tech because it started with just a couple of us guys talking about technology. We would love to have women join the group and contribute to the conversation. So anyone out there that would like to join, just shoot us a message and let us know, and we'll try to get you in on the next one.
I think it's Air Bunnies. Guys talking guys.
Guys, exactly. Guys Talking Tech. Next after that, we have the infamous or famous Patrick Healy.
Infamous, yes. And I don't think we need girls on Guys Talking Tech. I'll say it right now.
Oh,
I'm going to second that.
Or the
All
Heat
right.
Women Haters Club.
I said.
Is this Augusta National or what are we doing here, guys?
Hey, man. I think there's something to be said for it.
After that, we have the general badass Stephen Chip.
And I second Mr. Healy's thing. I mean, this is Guys Talking Tech, man. But if we want to have guys with an occasional lady talking tech, that might be a cool special we could do.
Fair enough.
But it is Guys Talking Tech, so.
Bunch of haters.
Well, then,
No, I think look, we get to bring in guests, but it's always going to be Guys Talking Tech. We bring in a guest. You know, there are probably some people we'd love to. You know, some women that are doing some amazing things. We'd love to have on the show. But.
Right, but it started with a bunch of guys sitting around talking about technology. I hear you there.
By the sounds of it, it sounds like we already have a couple of ladies here on the call.
Oh. Hey, Patrick, can we revoke their man cards?
I don't think they're not on the list.
All right. Well, this is already getting derailed. So I'm glad that we're picking up right where we left off. So the topic for today's conversation is that NAR on Realtor.org put out a highlights from the 2013 profile of home buyers and home sellers. They do a report every year that talks about trends in the real estate industry. And one of the really interesting statistics from that said that 88% of buyers purchased their home through a real estate agent or broker, a share that has steadily increased from 69% in 2001. Meaning, since 2001, more people are using brokers and agents to buy their home. So I think we're going to jump in and talk about sort of the correlation of the technology boom over that same time, if it's had an effect, what effect it's had, and yeah. So what do you guys think? Is there any correlation, or is this just a total coincidence?
Well, I think I put this out there early on, and I have not read the report. I have and looked at the methodology and such, but two things jump out at me. First, in 1991, the fact that it was 69% strikes me as a little low.
2001.
Sorry, 2001. That's actually surprisingly low. But the general premise of the correlation with technology, as I mentioned briefly earlier, just strikes me as counterintuitive, because all the other industries I could think of, technology has, and availability of information has essentially weakened the expert broker. If you think about the travel industry or car sales or a lot of those other, I would say financial is the one that I think is bucks that trend. But it just, on the surface, it'd be curious how more information in the hands of the consumer would strengthen the position of a real estate agent.
Well, you got to look at in 2005, you had Zillow, you had Trulia emerge, and I certainly think that, I mean, their whole program is based on, I mean, they don't exist if they're not able to leverage leads and sell them to brokers and agents. So I do think that, you know, we're coming almost 9 years into it, and even though Move had a pretty much, you know, a stronghold on that with Realtor.com, they certainly lost their position over time. So I would say, and there's a lot of other big online forces, and not only that, but the power. If you look at what an agent site was doing in 2001 versus an agent site now, and you look what Alex has brought to the equation with being able to bring agents and brokers mobile, and the way people have changed their usage habits. I think that it's a massive shift in the way that technology is being utilized. So I kind of do think that, you know, kind of agree with you, Joe, that it does seem kind of weird low, like strangely low when I looked at that number too. But you look at 2001, the difference between 2001 and even 2006. There was only one game in town. It was pretty much Realtor.com, and maybe Joe can chime in on that. But what I see is so much happening, especially you look at an agent site today, whether it's a WordPress-driven site, how many people out there are building agent sites? You know, there's E57s and a la modes of the world, and just amazing amount of awesome technology at a lot less than what it used to cost in the past. Joe, what are your thoughts on that from what you've seen and experienced? Sheehan.
Who, me?
That's it, Sheehan, old bastard. I mean, I should have said old bastard. Then when you would have known.
Bastard. Well, you know, I was kind of falling asleep. I'm getting old.
Okay, well, wow, that wasn't.
No, but that's quite all right.
That is honest.
I'm just curious who the other 12% are buying their houses from, because both of those numbers sound very low to me. And also, I'd be interested to know, people who are buying homes, are they buying homes using buyer agents, or are they going directly to the listing agents to buy them? Are they finding the properties on the portal sites like Zillow and so on? And are they contacting listing agents directly, or are they engaging with buyer agents? And what are buyer agents doing to promote their value proposition to buyers who now don't need them anymore to find houses for sale? But to Joe Drasen's point, and here's where I draw the distinction between the travel industry. I never had to see the airplane before I bought the plane ticket, but I do need to see the house before I put the money down. So,
but the auto sales industry has had the same experience. Where
yeah, but the dollars are not as much, okay? And I just went out. I mean, I did some research.
Not necessarily.
Wait a minute. I did some research myself. I just bought a new car 3 weeks ago. I went to cars.com and we did a little research, my wife and I. But I still went to the Lincoln dealer and bought a brand new Lincoln MKZ. And in the course of a couple of hours, you know, did the transaction. I did not buy the car online. I needed to drive the car. I needed to see all the bells and whistles and all the things that the car does before I was ready to plop the money down.
But the dealer, what I meant by that is the dealer no longer makes nearly the profit they made 15 years ago because so much information is available about pricing and competition.
And
I'll have to take your word for that. I don't know what the margins are.
Here's the thing that I think might break this whole counterintuitive piece, which is there's that old saying of you don't know what you don't know, right? But a lot of times, once you start, because of technology and because of the proliferation of information surrounding real estate, it gets to the point where you start doing your research around real estate and around buying a home, and then all of a sudden go, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to be an expert in this by the time I need to buy a home. I need to go consult an expert about this.
Yeah,
like, for as much as people are going to look up and try to diagnose themselves on WebMD, they're still going to go to a doctor because they still know they need an expert when they're going to get surgery. They're not going to try to perform that surgery themselves.
So let me just toss out here, 2001, what we're debating here is the counterintuitive part right now. 2001 was a very different. There was the internet, but very few people really used it, and it really didn't have all that was out there. So really, when you wanted to buy a house, what you did was you walked into another open house, you saw an agent, and you connected with that agent, and off you went. So you kind of sort of used an agent in that way. Nowadays, everybody does their own research. You mentioned Trulia, Zillow, Realtor.com, or an agent's website or what have you. You do your own research, but every single one of them leads back to an agent.
Yep.
Right.
So the number can't be less. The number has to be higher.
But here's the difference, Mike.
We're driving traffic back to an agent.
But here's the difference, okay? In the early 2000s, or maybe it was the late 1990s, and I don't know because I wasn't in the industry yet, there was no such thing as buyer agency. Today, buyer agency has kind of been adopted by just about every real estate brokerage in the country, and
New Jersey.
Well, even in New Jersey, buyer agency exists, but it's another story. But anyway, my point is this: are these websites directing potential buyers to the listing agents, or are they directing them to their own personal representation? And I think that when Mike, your example, they went into an open house and they bought the house, and maybe they bought the house from the agent who was sitting at the open house. He had an exclusive right to sell agency agreement with the seller, and the buyer essentially had no representation at all. So the question is... Yeah,
they didn't buy that house. They walked into that open house, and they said, well, this is fine, but I'm really looking for this. And, I mean, that lead came from a non-internet, that was a walk-in lead.
That's what I was.
I think that most would agree, though, that the source of, for lack of a better term, leads for real estate agents is typically referrals from friends and sphere of influence, not from the internet.
I agree.
The report actually gave that number. Hold on, I was just reading it.
Yeah, it went from 90 to 92% for...
No, that was internet usage.
Using the internet in terms of part of their home search.
42% found their agent through a referral from a friend or family member, and 12% used a previous agent they had used. Right. So I guess the other, what is that, 46% found it somewhere else.
I think one of the things we might be leaving out, and maybe, I don't know, I might be talking out of turn here, but, and maybe this number isn't big enough to really care about, what about the non-arm's length transactions? What about, my Uncle Joe has a house that he'll just deed it to me.
Right.
Or I'll buy it off of him for a price that we won't involve anybody. Nobody will tap it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in 2001, I mean, we're talking a 20% jump here. In 2001 was, 30% of the market, 30+% of the market doing that. I mean, if we're talking pre-internet days and there's no other way to go out and do research, not no other way, but, paper listing books and so on, 10 years prior to that, what were they doing?
I find that number completely unrealistic. I don't think 31%. I don't think 31% of the house buying public did the deal on their own. I just don't think it happened.
You mean in 2001 or?
In 2001, and then also the recent number, the 12% number. I don't think 12% go out and buy properties without representation, or buy the property from someone other than a real estate professional.
Well,
I would say that it's probably 95%.
I mean,
keep in mind, 2001, there was a huge boom going on. Everybody and their mother was looking to buy something.
I got to make a call. I'll be back.
Huh?
real estate calls. I'll put them on the... There you go. You muted them. Good man.
Trying to stay on top of it.
But what about what about that 12%? You still had buy owner, right? So buy owners, you hire an attorney looks over the contract, I mean, wouldn't you think that a buy owner would make up some portion of that? Because in a buy owner transaction, you're going directly to the seller, and you're generally hiring some sort of legal counsel, whether it's a real estate attorney or your friend, Patrick Healy, to look over the contract. You're gonna.
I could look over a contract. I'll have you.
That's right, and that's why you're going to, my man.
I mean, I know people who have done private transactions. Sure. I think why there may be the perception it's rarer than it is because you don't hear about them.
Nobody really talks about it. Everybody talks about, like, I had this great agent or this lousy agent, but nobody says, wow, I did the best job myself.
And the listing may never go public or what have you.
I bought my house in 1999, and I, to be honest with you, I'm not your normal person because I was online since 95, but but I was looking online. And it wasn't the same experience as it is today, but I actually saw my house online. But it was a frustrating experience because it was so, even if you compare 1999 to, let's say, 2003, it was like light years ahead. But there probably wasn't a lot. And I ended up using my mother had sold real estate for 30 years, and at the time she was still selling, so she hooked up a referral with an agent. So that's how I ended up with that agent. It wasn't somebody that I went out and chose, but there's a lot of that referral type of thing. So she'd end up with something out of it. So that's how it worked out.
Let me add, I think, a stat that might shed a little bit of light here. In the recap of the whole report, they quoted exactly what I had put on Facebook and what we started with, which is 88% of buyers purchase their home through a real estate agent or broker. They also, the stat that's quoted in the actual report is that 88% of sellers were assisted by a real estate agent when selling their home. Meaning,
that I find even more surprising.
That's crazy.
Meaning only 12% is FSBO or whatever else,
I can see that.
And so on. But then again, so 88% are on the seller side. That doesn't necessarily mean that all of the buyers were represented on their own or had buyer representation. We just know that 88% of people used an agent or a broker when selling their home, and because of which buyers in some way, shape, or form had to go through an agent or broker.
Alex, what was the sample on that? How many? What was it? Did they disclose the sample on that?
Let me look here.
Because
it's one of the most recent on Realtor.org. It's one of their most recent reports.
Because I always wondered too, that the universe. Sometimes these stats, they don't necessarily scale. I was at a recent Inman, and I remember them giving a stat on stage, and they had surveyed like 400 or 500 people, and then they try to break it out into a national type of a. And I don't even know how. You're talking regional first of all. I don't know how it breaks into a national stat. So sometimes a smaller sample pool could produce skewed results.
Well, this report, at least from what I read on the method side, was a pretty comprehensive one. But I completely agree that sometimes what they're pulling out of their report and what they're reporting on the front end don't exactly match up. Exactly the kind of example Alex had.
Well, if you look at the Economist inside of Realtor, right? NAR specifically, it looks like since 2008. I don't have the exact stats in front of me, but if you look since 2008, it appears as though the housing has been kind of rising ever since. So you can always kind of look and massage the numbers to be able to produce the results you're looking for, and sometimes that always kills me too, because I read a lot of these reports and I'm like, well, wait a minute, we should be just going crazy with real estate right now. The kind of boom they're talking about, it's like they're always looking inside the numbers, trying to say, well, we had an X% pickup here, and so we just deduced that this is what's happening. So Jill, like what's the methodology versus the reality? Sometimes you don't know. There's sometimes inside the numbers going on.
Well, I agree, and the response rate is like 6%. So
there you go.
6.1. I wouldn't be able to get away with that in my work, but I understand that their response rate on a survey like this is pretty crummy.
I hear that. On the other hand, though, when we're, I mean, statistically, Joe, that is crummy in terms of response rate, but also when you're looking at a 20% jump over 15 years, there's some basis behind it.
No, and actually what I was commenting more is that's a crummy number, but for this kind of survey, you would expect a crummy number.
Right. Right. These kind of surveys usually see more like 2 to 3%.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I wouldn't. It's a 120 questionnaire or something like that. That was my only comment. I don't know. I assume it was enough to be statistically significant, and I agree. 20% is a pretty big jump.
And Mike, I think Mike brought up a good point in the chat here, which is, sort of where ActiveRain and what sort of role that has played. I mean, I know for me, our company has been around 5 years, and I've seen somewhat of a decline in ActiveRain over even my time in the industry. Let's. All right, Mike Mueller, I want your input on this one.
Trulia owns ActiveRain now? I didn't know that.
No, I was actually, so if you missed the news, ActiveRain is now going to be a part of Trulia. It's going to be on the same thing and all of that. And I have to say, I loved ActiveRain. I was one of the early guys. Was in a bunch of newbie groups, and I was a moderator, and there was a big network, and a whole lot of my friends and a lot of my online started, let's say, with real estate, started with ActiveRain. And it has changed. It's changed a whole lot, and I really don't play in ActiveRain a whole lot anymore. But I wanted to throw in there, and this is a different topic than what we were just discussing, but ActiveRain is now going to be part of Trulia, and it's going to be on the same server, and your posts are still your posts and that kind of thing. But I wanted to eventually talk about that and how this is going to affect people who rely on ActiveRain.
I think there's a positive thing to this, and because I was looking at a lot this week. Bob Stewart put out that video, and something very important. He actually said in the video that I actually sent the video around at that exact section, and he said that something really good in this whole thing is that obviously you're posting all that, but the real big win I thought was they're going to allow follow links, and to me, follow links from an authority site is going to help out. And Bob made a really good comment about that, saying how that's really going to help the community, and I really do believe that. So by having follow links, most of the time they'll put no follow links, which means I still think you do get a little bit of credit. And Mike, you probably know a lot more about this, but even though they say a no follow link doesn't get anything, from an authority site they kind of weigh it somehow. We don't know how they weigh it, but follow links are big, especially from an authority site. So an authority site like Trulia with a higher page rank definitely could help somebody that's putting up a lot of blog posts. So I mean that is a kind of a cool thing, and I thought that was a really good move on there. That was a really good choice by Trulia. I thought they did a great job with that, and I actually respect the Trulia brand. I happen to love Trulia. I think Zillow is a great brand too. I mean, don't get me wrong, but they're both good brands in their own way. But Trulia is a little bit different in the sense of they kind of have a different ecosystem. And when they made this acquisition of Market Leader, Market Leader already had in its arsenal, it already had ActiveRain. But I do think they've got they also added a lot of agents, and and Market Leader was doing some amazing things, especially building agent sites, building Keller Williams, and they had a bunch of other corporate brands underneath the umbrella. So CRMs, the whole 9 yards. So I think it was a really, really smart acquisition. It made a lot of sense, and I don't think they got enough credit for that. But again, I'm not an agent. I'm on the technology side of real estate, so I'd really want to hear more from Joe Sheehan, our resident old bastard, who does sell. I just love saying that. You have that on there. I have to say it, man.
That's cool.
And, hear from everybody else. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Is that a good thing?
Well, I've never been a ActiveRain user. I did have an account for about 3 weeks, and then I said I'm really not going to use this, so I got rid of it. and I never looked back. So I really don't have much of an opinion at all. I do feel very strongly about Trulia and Zillow. I mean, they help me personally in my personal business. Both of them are very effective in advertising my listings and in generating leads for me, and it makes the phone ring, and that's what it's all about for me. So
how many sides do you do a year off those leads?
I don't know the statistic right off the top of my head. Probably a dozen.
Okay,
maybe.
So you're averaging about one a month then.
Yeah, thereabouts.
I'll tell you what, I do get the daily email, and I've been getting it for years. Mike, I wasn't probably as early as you. You're always the first guy in. I find out things if you've done it. You're always the first guy in there. But what I've discovered is that, I still find myself reading them, because I always find I get a pretty good firsthand agent account. I feel closer to the community because, someone had mentioned, showing a house. This was one that was, I think, yesterday. They showed a house, beautiful house, exactly what they're looking for, hardwood floors, stainless steel, everything was great. Look into the neighbor's yard, and there was 2 semis and things up on, empty tires and stuff in the background. And the owner left a note. I thought this was funny. The owner left a note and said, it was like on the back window, it said, "Don't worry, they're building a pole shed to cover up all their junk." And the agent basically said, too late. The people were already halfway out of that house. There was already a done deal. So I like those little anecdotal stories, and it really, for me, I like reading that stuff. It helps me keep in touch, and I suppose it does help other people too.
Well,
looking for an agent.
Yeah, we used to, back in the day, we used to have a thriving community, and we were all helping each other and learning how to blog and things like that, which brings up a whole nother thing. And I'm a big fan. I still, and I like that Trulia is taking over them and basically putting them under their wing, because I think there's a lot of money behind there, and ActiveRain isn't going to go away. What if tomorrow, because there's a lot of people who have public-facing ActiveRain, what if tomorrow ActiveRain wasn't part of Trulia and they had to make money somehow, and they decided to do the Facebook thing where you have to pay to show yours? So they started pay for advertising or pay for public. How many people would be active then?
I think they would leave it like a sinking ship.
Yeah, but
Exactly.
they have paid accounts now. If you want to be a rainmaker, you're going to pay your $49 a month. So
Absolutely.
they already have that. So if you choose to do that, that's great.
I know.
Business.
I see your point, though.
Yeah.
Well,
So I think it's got staying power. I think it's a good thing now.
In terms of the community aspect, and maybe this is the correlation, we've also seen a big change in the reason people are moving over the last couple decades. A lot more people are branching out and moving further away from home than they ever have before. They're moving to different communities and different areas and different locales. So a lot of times, and I know at least for my friends, they spend a lot of time looking online, but when it comes right down to it, they want somebody that knows that neighborhood, that knows that area. So I'm wondering if sort of those two things together, where technology is playing some correlation in allowing them to be able to look at homes on the other side of the country, is playing a role. But on the other hand, the agents still have to play even more of a role, because once you've done that sort of macro view in terms of looking at properties, then it's time to go, wow, I really need somebody who knows this area and knows what I'm in for when I'm moving there.
Right. Absolutely. And I will tell you, my wife, hopefully she's not watching, she watches this House Hunters International.
Mm-hmm.
I tell you, half of her time now is spent looking up little places that we can move to in Ireland and Scotland and this island off of this and
Scotland!
Scotland!
Central America, that's where to go.
And if you're gonna move, yeah, you need somebody who knows the neighborhood, who's got feet in the ground there, and has has the ability to tell you, here's what you're looking for. I know this neighborhood.
Well, I think that might even be a. I was just going to say this might be a perfect segue into what Chipper was talking about earlier today, which is if technology isn't playing a role, and there's something else as to why more and more people are using agents, then why are all these companies trying to gobble up executives from whatever other technology company and move them from place to place? Why are they doing that? Why are they focusing on that as
they're just buying rock stars. They're buying brand. Like, you get a big name and it causes a big splash and it gets people in the industry to believe in you. And to be honest, they make their money off of people in the industry. It doesn't matter if any of us believe that the acquisition of this big name executive is going to do great for this giant portal. It's if the hundreds of thousands of agents in the country, or rather millions of agents in the country, who have heard, ooh, this was the president of so-and-so and now he's there, I better give them another look. They're buying celebrity. That's all they're doing.
Well, I would say, I agree with you, Patrick. I mean, they could be buying it as a competitive reason, but even if they weren't, they would still be doing it. It's not. You can't assume just because they're doing that technology is the focus. And I believe there are probably other demographic reasons why people may be more likely to be using agents now. For instance, I don't know if this is the case, but I wouldn't be surprised if people move further now for jobs and such. People don't stay in a local community where they know people.
See, I think there's a trend, though, that's happening, guys, and we haven't really touched it, and maybe nobody wants to say it, but I'll say it, because I seem to be the one that always says it. I see the role of an agent as, yes, you said before, yeah, they need to have somebody that knows the area, right? Now, when you say no, I don't think people really care if they know where the churches are, or they know where the good shopping is, or they know how good the schools are, because people can find that out themselves. I think what agents are quickly becoming, whether everybody wants to admit it or not, they're becoming financial advisors. Is this house worth $300,000? What they really want is, I want you to help me not get ripped off. It's not a matter of, I need to make this sale or I don't eat. The agent has to be, not afraid to say, don't buy this house. It's overpriced. Let somebody else pick this house up. You don't want this. This is not worth a penny more than $260. It's not worth $300. Walk away. And there's not a lot of agents willing to do that.
I don't think
if you're saying that, Patrick, if they have access to the same data, why can't I just go look at comps?
Well, because comps are bullshit.
Well, I'm just saying.
What?
Comps are bullshit.
Comps are bullshit. Whoa! Let's back up there a minute.
Wait a minute. You're off the reservation, Healy.
No, listen, comps are that good, and estimates would be accurate, right? They're not.
What do you mean they're not?
Comps are based on sales.
Built the same year, built the same exact way. One house is worth $25,000 more than the other one. That's not. You don't get that from a comp. You got to see that, and the guy that's on the ground knows how these places are taking care of, how those neighborhoods are moving.
How do you suppose appraisers come up with value?
Exactly.
Right.
I took the words out of my mouth.
I think appraisal is not an exact science. I think it's very important, but it's not an exact science by any means.
It's an opinion of value.
Right.
It's opinion.
A professional opinion of value. It's not like Bob down the streets telling you what his house is worth.
I would certainly rather have an appraiser telling me what I should be paying for a house rather than an agent.
Oh, well, you will, believe me, because I'm going to insist on that.
But why even deal with the back and forth? Do you need the chauffeur to drive you around the neighborhood?
I don't know, do you?
I don't.
Buy a house sight unseen?
Well, you could do that yourself, though.
Would you?
If you're from out of town, Patrick, if you're from out of town and you want to move, let's say you want to move here to Walnut Creek, there are countless neighborhoods. You're not necessarily going to know. You can see them on the map, but you're not going to know where you want to move. It's that dialogue that you have with an agent. It's that personal interaction that you're going to have with that agent. That agent's going to have a better idea of, in theory, what neighborhood, besides the house, besides the overpriced. You're absolutely right on the overpriced part, but I think there's a little bit more. You don't need an agent to say, here's where all the parks are. and the schools and the churches or all that kind of stuff. But definitely, there's a lot of this is a big wide town, and there's a lot of different neighborhoods.
If I can, I just bought a house too, because I have both those experiences. I bought a house 2 years ago, and for me it was very much what Patrick said. It was, I knew a lot about the housing, but he helped me. He helped me with the negotiating of the price and telling, a lot of the financial side and a lot of what we can get this for. But my parents are looking right now to move out here, and for them, they're using the same agent, and the conversation is almost completely about what kind of lifestyle they want and what niche areas and neighborhoods. And even though I've lived here several years and my brother lives here for even longer, we don't know that breadth of knowledge. So we've had two completely different experiences with the same agent.
And let's take this to the next level. We're talking about technology that the consumer is using. Let's take it another level and talk about tools like RPR that are agent-only tools where when we're talking comps, we're not just talking about what X sold for down the street. We're talking about whether this has marble or composite countertops or how long since the windows have been changed, kind of details that go into appraisal estimates. What?
Does RPR get that granular?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even more granular.
Like the last time the windows were changed?
Yes.
It could. You have to input that information.
But how do you get that information in the first place?
Well, the seller tells
Inspection.
you.
Right. Also, seller inspections, things like that.
They can automate it too with contractor liens, because every time something's done inside of a house, I mean, they could. I don't know that they do that.
They do. They do. They get. Yeah, and they get data. And it depends on different locations and what MLSs have opted in and so on.
It's still an AVM. The degree of accuracy is no different than his estimate, if you ask me. They use different information, but it's still an AVM.
Isn't his estimate an AVM?
Say what?
Isn't his estimate an AVM?
Yeah.
I mean, I know that there's an AVM and there's a market estimate. There's like two different. There's like a commercial grade and then there's consumer grade.
The amount of data that's used between what Zillow does for their estimates and what RPR does is not even close.
What do you think is the difference?
RPR has at least 10 times the number of data sources in terms of what they're using to calculate. At least. We work very closely, and with that, if you go to their site and look through what they're actually compiling, it's not even close to the raw data.
I'm a huge fan of RPR. Believe me, I use it every single day. There's not a day goes by that I'm not in RPR. But the fact is that I take the estimate with a grain of salt, just like I do. I mean, I use it as a guideline, but it's not.
Sure, and you take any estimate with a grain of salt.
Sure.
I mean, any computer or automated system that's going to give you, plug in data and spit out result, you have to take with some sort of grain of salt. All I'm saying is, when we're talking about technology, we're not just talking about the consumer side. There have also been huge leaps in terms of data that only agents are accessing these days that are separating the industry and changing things as well.
Well, I agree, but like I said, I like the fact with RPR where you can actually go in and you can tweak the dials and you can turn the knobs and so on and so forth and fine-tune those estimates. But at the end of the day, it's what the buyer is willing to pay. That's what the house is worth. So.
Well, I mean, back to our earlier point, though, isn't that kind of almost, not quite, but almost irrelevant because it's whatever it appraises at?
Well, yeah, but eventually the appraisal catches up to what the buyer is willing to pay. Because appraisals are based on comps.
So
they're based on on comps. I just had an appraiser call me the other day on a pending listing that I have right now, asking me what the house sold for, so she could use it as a comp.
So if if it is people looking to not get ripped off, right? If we're talking about, and Joe Drasen, you brought up the two scenarios. There's the community scenario, and then there's the financial scenario.
And there may be others. Those are just
there may be others. Right. We know the community experience happens. We see it all the time, and we know agents all. I mean, Richard Silver is a perfect example of an agent who is all about the neighborhood and knowing the community and gets a ton of his business because he knows the community. On the other hand, let's talk the financial side of getting ripped off. Everything else taken out. If you had no data whatsoever about comps or estimates or RPR or whatever, right? No data, and someone comes to you and says, "Am I going to get ripped off?" How are you doing it then?
Well, I have access to sold data. I know what the house is sold for.
And that's where comps come from.
Well, hell yeah.
So is it you doing it? So how is it you doing it in your head is better than an algorithm that dozens of intelligent mathematicians have worked on for however long?
Because
I'm just devil's advocate here.
I can't explain what I did. I can't explain what RPR does.
Yeah, but not only that, too, but you know there could be two streets back up to each other, 2 streets away. It's a completely different neighborhood. It's got it has to do with knowledge, boots on the ground, knowing your neighborhood and your communities. I mean, it's knowledge. It's knowledge that you're never going to be able to put in there. And I think it's funny, Alex, you already knew the answer to that, but it's cool. I'm glad you asked it because just to show the point. But it's so funny. I see that all the time too. And even if you look at appraisals sometimes. If you go through an appraisal and you look at it, you can see something tank an appraisal because they put something in there that doesn't belong, and sometimes they're not that familiar with the community, but I've looked at appraisals and I go, well, because I know that community, I'm like, why would they have thrown that in there? It either elevated it or it made it lower. It's usually just one that was wrong, but the rest of them were pretty much on target.
Well, and back to my original point, that was the point I was driving at was, a guy like Joe Sheehan, who's feet on the street, is seeing everything that's moving, and he's like, "Wow, I'm really surprised that house was sold for that, whether it be high or low. Wow, I'm surprised at this." And he makes his mental adjustments that he can't explain his algorithm, but he's the guy that's going to say, "Listen, I've seen everything in this town sell for the past 2 years. I'm telling you, my gut's telling me." He's like your little caddy on the putting green. Like, you're probably gonna want to push it to the right a little. Like, he knows that stuff. Where an appraiser who's not local won't know it, and an algorithm sure as hell won't know it. Because Joe can walk through the house.
It's always a test. You go in with a range of values because you go to you pick the median value, the high, the low. You do pick a dozen houses that have sold within a certain radius. And you go back to the seller and you say, well, the house is going to sell between this number and this number. Pick one. And they'll probably pick somewhere right in the middle of the two. And sometimes it's a little higher than the median price. And you say, okay, well, let's test that and see what happens. And in 30 days, if it doesn't sell, we're going to lower the price. And that's typically what happens.
So
I have one right now. I have a listing over here in Pottstown. It's not a very expensive listing, and we dropped the price after 30 days, and I'm getting a lot of showings, a lot of positive feedback, but no offers. So I called the seller. I said, you know what? We got to lower the price again. So.
Well, let's put this out another 10 years. As technology continues to adapt.
I'll be living in Chipland in 10 years.
You'll be somewhere in the Caribbean, right, Joe?
No, I'll be
on a small
island. And Michael be in some cottage in Scotland or Ireland.
That my wife found.
Ireland.
But really, though, over the next 10 years, do you think it's going to just stick right at this 88, 89, 90% of people are using an agent to sell their home, and the rest of it is, that's what we're going to see? Do we see technology significantly changing that?
Well, now we're back to the...
Sheehan, you think the number's too low?
Yeah, definitely.
Really?
I think the number's closer to 95%.
There's always going to be people who transfer property outside of the circle of brokers and real estate agents.
Yeah, but those aren't sales. Those are not necessarily sales. We're talking about buyers looking to buy homes. Yeah. They're going to call a real estate agent to do it.
Well, I don't know how they. I didn't know their definition, but they may have just said any transfer of ownership of title. Deed.
Bless you.
Thank you.
I think even still that number is a little low, but I suppose that transfers of title between two parties.
Well, I don't know how they got their denominator.
Yeah, I don't either.
What about new builds? Do new builds ever sell direct?
What do you mean sell direct? They all sell direct.
Well, meaning like there's no agent that's brokering anything for them. It's like, you built a house, I want to buy the house.
The builder usually has an agent representing them.
Every time, or no?
I would say most of the time.
A lot of times they're one and the same too. A lot of times the real estate company is one and the same, owns the building company, or we've seen that a lot of times. In fact, I'm looking for it now. In that report in the report that I linked Joe on this, they gave the percentage of people that had nothing to do with, and it was like 9% of people had absolutely nothing to do with an agent or whatever, and actually sold the property one to another. And I'm looking for it right now. I think it's like page 5 or 6 of the overview.
So what we're saying is that 9% are successful FSBOs.
Pretty much, and I'm looking for the exact.
NAR says in another study that 4% of FSBOs actually sell, and that the rest of them, the FSBO eventually hires an agent to do the job.
4%?
4%.
That I find very surprising.
Weird.
I'm looking for
What, you think it's higher?
Here.
You think just more successful FSBOs?
I'd say my gut would tell me
4 out of 100 seems odd.
Unrepresented sellers.
Okay, but that could also be
give them a brand.
Could be real estate attorneys, and I don't necessarily know.
So, Alex, back to your original question, your original point: is it going to continue to increase? At what point does it stop? And I see a little bit of increase if it's been going this way. Naturally, it's going to continue. And realistically, like I pointed out, everything that is online now kind of connects somebody up to a licensed real estate agent or a broker.
Yep.
So Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com, personal websites, whatever, they're all driving people to licensed real estate brokers.
Okay, my good friend, this is going to cause some hair to catch fire. A good friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, and of many of you as well, Scott Forcino and I have had many conversations about this. And it is our belief, or our supposition, I don't know if it's my belief yet, but it's a supposition, that because of the aggregators, the data aggregators, that is Zillow, Trulia, and to an extent Realtor.com, as listing brokers realize that more and more of their leads are coming directly from buyers who are calling them because of their listings being shown on those sites, that they're going to stop offering co-ops to buyer agents. And when they stop offering co-ops to buyer agents because they're going to just sell the houses themselves, then buyer agents are going to have to come up with some way to convince people that they're worth it. And they don't do a very good job of that right now. And so I think it's going to be it could be a cataclysmic change in the industry in the next 10 years as listing brokers begin to realize that they don't need buyer agents anymore. They can sell the properties themselves because the buyers don't need the agent to find the properties. They can find it themselves by going to these sites.
But the demographic trend of people not living where they grew up and moving every 5 years instead of every 40 years goes to the exact opposite of that, that people want buyer agents because they don't know where the hell they're moving.
I don't know if that's true. I think if they find a house that they like on the internet, they pick up the phone and they call the number that shows up on the bottom of the screen.
Average home buyer saw 10 homes, viewed 10 homes before they purchased. They didn't find one property online, call and say, I'm going to go buy this. They, on average, viewed 10 homes.
No, but they could have gone to, they could view 10 homes and they could have called 10 listing agents to do it. It'll be almost like going to the supermarket to buy a house.
I see what you're saying, you know, and if you think about if you were doing the same research in 2001, the MLS had one picture of the front, and it was a pretty crappy picture of the front of the house.
Right.
And now you should have on that property all the pictures that you possibly could handle, maybe even a video, an unbranded video for most MLSs. And you're giving them a whole lot more information, but they still saw 10 houses.
Yeah.
So even with all that information in their hand, they went, wow, I really like this house. Oh, and after they see it, they go, nah, maybe not.
Yeah, and then they go home and they log into Zillow, and then they call the next agent on the list that's got the next house that they like.
That number 10 is lower. I think it's lower than when I bought my first house, and that's just the average. So for every person like me who looks at 20 houses, if someone only looks at one, then yeah, the average person had 10. But so I think that number may be skewed. I probably looked between 20 and 30, actually.
I don't work with a lot of buyers lately. It's probably been a couple of months, but I do have a couple that I'm working with right now. And you know, the MLS gives us the ability to send listings to our buyers automatically, right? So when a new property becomes available, the MLS will send an email to the. Well, I can tell you that of the 5 or 6 people that I'm working with on the buyer side, I can look at the emails. I can see that they never even opened them. Yet they'll call me with a list of houses they want to go see. So I said, well, where'd you find these houses? It says, I found it on Zillow, or I found it on Truly, or I found it on Yahoo Homes, or whatever.
And that also depends on the market. Well, like, for example, in Queens, you can't find, and you know this, Patrick, you can't find a home on Zillow. The moment you call, it's off the market. Boston's
when you call a Zillow home, they're like, yeah, we sold that 3 months ago, man.
Right. Or even I saw it listed today. Oh yeah, that was sold 6 hours ago. Sorry.
Well, yeah, that happens here too. I mean, we have no inventory. We've got buyers and we don't have anything to sell them because there are no houses.
So
I put a listing up and it's gone in 3 days.
Which is great.
But
in those markets where it's low inventory, does it make more sense to have buyer representation, or is it more likely people are going to go through the headache of calling listing agent after listing agent to find out that the house that they just wanted to see online isn't on the market anymore?
Well, I'm just saying that the notion of buyers using buyer agents to find a home for them is waning. That whole notion is going away. Buyers are finding the homes on their own. Now, they may use a buyer agent to actually execute the transaction, but they're not using us to look for homes anymore.
You know, I gotta say one cool thing though. You know, I sold a condo, an investment property. I had that in October. I don't know if you guys know Gia Freer and or Grant. They're pretty well known in the community, real estate community. But she was phenomenal. One of the things that I loved was sometimes she'd just pop by my office, and she had an iPad, and I would just sign off on docs and stuff like that. I mean, I just loved how she was leveraging technology, and not only that, but all the insight. And she really spent some time. This was kind of a weird thing because, you know, I'm kind of connected to the industry. I'm not an agent. But when she told me which the house should sell for, I actually had to question her and said, "Are you sure?" She said, "Well, why? Are you thinking it's higher?" I'm like, "No, man. I think it's a hell of a lot lower. I think that might be 20K too high." She's, "Oh, no. I did my comps. I pulled everything. This is what it's selling for. You're gonna be surprised. When was the last time you looked at houses that were selling?" I said it hadn't been for 6 or 7 months, maybe 8. She said, "Go take a look. I think you're gonna be pleasantly surprised." And it sold in less than 12 hours. 3 offers. She did price it right, and I was very happy. But I got to say, as an experience of selling the house, the technology that the agent that she was using was impressive. The stuff that she would do, like she worked on my wavelength. I'm not a paper person, so I'd get this stuff in an email. I could turn this stuff in an email. She'd pop by my office and say, "You forgot to sign a form," and I'm signing it on a tablet. Those are the kind of things that I think that those kind of experiences are experiences that I will share, and I do think that, you know. Well, whatever happened to Grumpy Old Bastard? I like that one. That was fun, too. He's just old bastard. But, you know, Joe, is like what your point is that I do think that there's a personal experience that an agent brings to something that you're going to talk about. And I do think that the word-of-mouth stuff and asking for referrals. Now, one thing Gia did was she asked for referrals. And I was happy to hook her up and said, yeah, hang on a second. I know maybe 2 people that may be selling. She said, help me because we don't – the same thing you're saying. I don't have the inventory. That was one of the reasons that mine sold. It was nicer than the rest. It probably could have fetched more. But that personal experience you get with an agent, you know, that I felt, I mean, I want to tell the world and say, man, she was phenomenal from point A to point Z.
I'm not suggesting that agents are obsolete. Okay, and all that technology, I have the same thing. I walk in with an iPad, and you can electronically sign documents right on the iPad. I have all that. I do all that now. In fact, I don't even carry this damn thing around anymore. All I carry around is my little iPad now because I get everything I need is there.
Right.
So I do agree, but the one function, which is the function of actually access to the secret list of properties that are available, is no longer a function that falls on the real estate. It's not a secret list anymore. Okay, the list is now in the public domain. You can go to these websites and you can find every house that's on the market, and even some houses that are no longer on the market, with very little effort. And that is my point. So buyer agents, okay, who, you know, old-time buyer agents who say, well, call me and I'll help you find a house and I'll send you the MLS list. They say, I don't need the MLS list. Don't send them to me. And now they're lost. They don't know what to offer these people because...
You could do that in 2004. You could go in 2004, Facebook launched, you could go online, you could look up properties, there wasn't a hidden list anymore. This is 10 years later now, and we've seen a 20% jump in people using agents.
Yeah, but the real hidden list is what you find like on a site like foreclosure.com. The shadow. Let me tell you why. Because the shadow inventory, this is stuff you got to know that it's in redemption, it's coming out, but it's doable, and the banks are willing to sell it. So this is stuff it's not listed in the MLS. So I do think that agents will start to get smarter, because just like anything, any kind of, you know, they always bring one animal in to combat another insect, and whatever ends up happening is that one ends up overpowering it. And I think that, you know, agents are really smart, you know, and they will find a way to adapt. They will learn how to leverage technology, and they'll find a way to survive and bring something new to the mix. That's kind of how I view it. And I kind of see that, okay, so you're right, maybe they don't have the secret list, but believe me, there's a ton of shadow inventory out there still. There always will be. The default rate's always going to be 3%, 2.5% to 3% to 5%. It's going to vary. You know, it might not get up as high as 12 to 15, hopefully, for a while. But if you think about that, all banks combat, you know, or bank on the fact that it's going to be 3%. So there's always going to be a fair amount of inventory, and the stuff that's in redemption period is always going to be very hidden from view, and the agents that know how to leverage that kind of data, I think, are going to have a huge win in that space.
I don't disagree. I absolutely agree with you.
And there's also, you know, those that are in marketing associations that all network together. They've got their coming soons. They have not.
Oh boy, that's a whoa.
But you know what? Before we jump into that one, we are getting close to the hour limit here.
Yeah.
Couple things. I think this has been a great discussion, heated discussion. As everyone probably knows, we've done a lot more real estate discussion on this, as opposed to the nerdy, techie kind of stuff that we normally do. But I think these kinds of discussions frame how all of us look at technology going forward, and that's kind of what I want as the ending. First, you're going to answer 2 questions. All right? Question 1, is this number going to go up or go down over the next 10 years? Question 2, what technology is going to be the reason for driving it that way?
Is what going to go up?
Is that 88%, the percentage of people using either buyer or seller agents during the transaction, is that 88% going to go up or down over the next, or stay stagnant over the next 10 years? And what technology is going to drive it in that direction that you say it's going to go?
I'll go first. It's got to go up.
Going up. All right.
It's going up, and it's going up because momentum for one. So it's got to continue to go up. That number's going to get smaller and smaller. And like I said, everything that comes out is going to drive. It already does, but it's going to drive it over to the agent. What technology? I'm going to say we're going to get much more, and I'm going to go over to my mobile phone, and we're going to have much more local-driven technology. Where right now, what we're talking about is we're talking about Zillow and Trulia and Realtor.com on a national level, and I'm talking about something that works on my mobile phone that drives what I'm looking for locally.
Yeah, barcode. Sorry. I just had to plug that.
I think the number's going to go up because I think it's wrong now. So I think that it's too low, and as the statistics are reevaluated and changed, it has to go up because people are going to continue to use real estate agents to buy houses. There's no question about it.
What's it going to go up to?
Well, sell houses.
I
think your argument was that they're going to use them to sell houses as opposed to buy, right?
They're going to sell houses. They're going to help buyers buy houses. They're going to help sellers sell houses.
Awesome. Drasen?
I say it's going to go down for no other reason than I believe all statistics regress to the mean. The fact that it was lower before and going up now, just on average, I would always bet that over time it will have to go back down. And I don't necessarily think that technology is the biggest influence on it. I do think that there's other demographic issues that are in play.
Okay.
Sorry to skirt the second part of the sentence.
No, that's fine.
I would say that I would kind of look at it this way, that I kind of see the way technology probably will evolve. I'll put number 2 first, and I think 2 really generally influences 1. I do think that this move that you saw Zillow make, they play to win. It's all about winning, okay? And I think it's a bold move, and I think it was with the acquisition of some new talent. I don't think it had anything at all to do with I think it had more to do with who the people were. I don't think I mean, does anybody think for a moment that Move had technology, secret technology that was going to be unleashed? I mean, they've lost market share consistently over the last 10 years. I mean, I could be wrong, and I am often, but I just don't think so. I think it was personalities. I think Patrick said it before, but what I really think it comes down to is that what we're going to see is a big shift in MLSs, okay, because they're struggling to hold on, and I think a lot of times they do a larger disservice to agents than they help them. And that's a whole other topic. I've got a lot of reason behind that. I want to keep it short, but I will say that I do think what's happening as the strength gets larger with big sites and newer sites. I'm finding a lot of cool sites coming out lately that are just phenomenal. And what they're doing, they bring something a little bit different to it. So I think there's going to be some more risers as far as competitors in the space. But I do think that the MLSs will eventually lose their grip because I think as agents get smarter, they'll realize that they're not benefiting enough from the representation. And I think that you might see agents getting together. It's why, like you see in Southern California, 35% of the homes sold via pocket listings. Well, why? Because the MLS isn't working for them. They're working with each other. And I think that that's going to influence that one. So it may be that the agents, that number rises, but it will be because of agents doing what's best for them. And I'm not so sure MLSs always represent the agent best. That's just my personal thing. But I do think that if it goes higher, it probably doesn't go more than 90% because you're always going to have that 5 to 10% flux of other things. It doesn't matter. It's just like anything. There's always going to be somebody that's going to go off the beaten trail and say, I don't need an agent. I'm going to do it myself. Okay, well, you got ripped off, and you made a bad decision. But hey, man, you got to do it yourself and whatever. So that's kind of what I think it's going to be. But I think that should be a discussion for another Guys Talking Tech.
Fair enough. Patrick?
I don't want to give you the answer that I'm going to give you, but I'm going to. I've been saying this for a long time. I see, and we mentioned it before, I see the decline of the buyer's agent. Unless real estate professionals become more trusted advisors and become more in line with the financial advisor, because you're buying an asset like anything else, I don't see the value being there for a lot of smarter consumers. In terms of the technology, to what you said before, Chipper, I think there's going to be a lot more competition. I think there's going to be a big trend towards direct-to-consumer. I think that Zillow and Trulia are not in it for the agency game. They're not in it for the MLS game. I think this is a direct-to-consumer play. You might think I'm a lunatic, but
kind of what I just said.
I think that's where it's going, guys.
I do too.
I think, Steven, I'm going to buy your house from you at some point, not today, but very soon.
Here's the thing, though, and I think you're both right to some extent, which is processing the paperwork, and I don't know if you guys know Valerie Garcia. She's works with Remax very heavily in Canada as one of their trainers, and one of the big topics at a conference in Canada was over the next 10 years submitting the actual paperwork without having to go through the agent, to submit an offer, to write your own offer, to submit it, and have it go directly from one to another, where the agent is sort of there overseeing it as part of some portal, but in reality it goes from one person to another.
Well, a caveat to my statement, Alex. I also see the emergence of a flat fee and getting rid of the 6% garbage.
Okay.
I can't imagine it existing much longer.
I see it as this.
Of course, we've been saying that for several years.
For a long time, and that's not changing. I see it as this, though. I think it goes back to the advisor, whether it is a financial advisor, whether it's a neighborhood advisor, whether it's a community advisor, whether it is... I think the role has changed slightly over the last 10 years, but it's going to continue in terms of the agent is there as your advisor throughout this process. It is the biggest purchase people will ever make for most people in their lives. If they do it more than once, it's normally the largest purchases that one person will ever make. And bringing in an advisor as part of that is never a bad idea, especially someone that has that sort of expertise. Now, in terms of technology driving that, I see the paperwork, the transaction, the administration, those sort of aspects being driven by technology, but I see this number staying stagnant over the next 10 years because people, in reality, even if I can process that form and submit an offer myself, that doesn't change anything for me when I'm buying a home. I still want all of that advisory role that agents and brokers do such a great job at.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the scary thing here is that in Pennsylvania you don't need a high school diploma to be a real estate agent.
I don't think you need one in New York either.
Probably not.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
60 hours of pre-licensing training, and tomorrow you can sell a $2 million home on your own.
You still got to pass. You still have to pass something.
Oh, you have to pass a test. I forgot.
Okay, there's a test.
Being able to and actually doing it are two vastly different things.
Excellent point, Alex.
Excellent. Yeah, agreed.
To be honest, you shouldn't need any level of education to do anything in this world. You really shouldn't. It comes down to your own personal commitment.
Tell that to your physician.
Yeah, tell that to your dentist or your surgeon.
I'm an anarchist tonight, man. I'm a total anarchist.
When I think of financial advisor and high school dropout, they just don't seem to fit for me.
Yeah, well.
Well, do you ever think multi-billionaire and college dropout?
I can deal with that.
But it happens all the time.
Well, a college dropout today is a high school dropout years ago.
Okay.
It's true. That's a very good point. And on that note, I think it's time to end it. Until next time, thank you, everybody. I greatly appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this evening. Next time, I promise, we are going to be a little more techy and a little more nerdy, and not quite so much of the big, heavy macro real estate stuff. So, signing off. Have a good night.
Hey, guys. See ya.